Inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
Inconceivable. Inconceivable.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
I don't think that verse means what you think it means is a theme of this last several weeks. We've been looking at verses that people read and have misunderstood, misinterpreted. We started out by looking at the promise of Jesus, I will give you whatever you ask in my name. We talked about do not judge. And last Sunday we spent our time looking at Jeremiah 29:11. That verse that says, you know the thoughts I have for you, the plans to prosper you, and putting that in perspective and helping us understand more about that one. Today we're going to look at the fourth one in this series, and it has to do with money. And I'm thinking and hearing about this weekend and all the things that have taken place this weekend about the eclipse and the way people have been using the opportunity to make some money. I thought it's appropriate that we would look at one of the not misinterpreted or misused verses of Scripture, but maybe perhaps one of the most misquoted ones. The statement is, money is the root of all evil. Chances are we've all heard that. The experience around this eclipse has really reinforced my mind when it comes to money, the way people look at it. I was talking to my son, so I told some of you already, my son-in-law told me last night about a gentleman who has some property, and 2 years ago he started advertising campsites for the eclipse. And he advertised them for $1,500 a site, non-refundable. And the size of his property is such that he's going to come away with over $500,000 as a result of this weekend. And he's planning on retiring tomorrow. Seriously, he is quitting his job and retiring. But it just seems everywhere I've looked that this idea of making money off of this event has become almost a theme. And so money, we live in a society that seems to be focused on it. If you look about, you'll find that didn't turn out. Let me just read those. Money has all kinds of cliches and things to go with it. Woody Allen said, money's better than poverty, if only for financial reasons. An unknown author said, they say money talks, but all mine says is goodbye. And then Elizabeth Taylor says, how can money be the root of all evil when shopping is the secret to happiness? So money is a theme that has dominated. We live in a society that seems to measure everything in terms of that. And so we're going to spend some time getting to that statement, money is the root of all evil. It's not actually, the verse doesn't actually say that. It's from 1 Timothy 6:10, and this is the way it reads, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Now, before we go any further, I want you to just take a moment and underline the love of money. And money is not evil. The love of money is a root, not the root of all kinds of evil. We're going to build on that a little bit more. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So we're going to look at that verse. We're going to take it down and we're going to look at it and strive to understand a little bit more about what Paul meant by the love of money. And so we're going to look at it in four different aspects. We're going to start with a definition. What exactly is the love of money? What does that look like? We're going to talk about the symptoms of the love of money. We're going to talk about the dangers associated with the love of money. And we're going to look at the defense against that in our lives. And Paul lines it out pretty well in 1 Timothy 6. So let's begin with a definition. If you look at the love of money, it's a compound word, two Greek words, phileo, love, argyros, silver, the love of silver. And that love, phileo, I know you've been told over and over again in Greek, there's three words for love. There's eros, which is that romantic and passionate love between a man and a woman. It talked about agape, who's always thinking the best interest of others. Phileo is a tenderness that's focused on the object more than anything else. If you look at John 21, where Jesus talks to Peter, and he asks him 3 times, do you love me? And Peter said, I phileo you. The object is on the person. It's almost like possessing that person, that my meaning in my life is found in that connection I have. And so they are my hope. Love money describes the individual for whom money is the first priority in life. Anybody ever watch the old Bob Newhart show where they had the inn in New Hampshire, and there was 3 guys that came in, Daryl, and Daryl, and their business was called Anything for a Buck. And I think that kind of captures what we're talking about when it comes to the love of money, is someone who will do anything to attain more. Now, let me be clear as we think about that more. It has nothing to do with the amount of money you have. You can be poor as a pauper and still love money. And that can be your highest goal and dream in life. And Paul helps us out in verse 9 and 10. He describes it. He says, those who want to get rich. Now, I think we need to give a disclaimer. There's nothing wrong with being rich. Okay? In fact, I would look around this room and say everybody in this room is rich compared to the rest of the world. We need to redefine it. But there's nothing wrong with possessing material wealth. To make it the ultimate desire in your life is where we cross the line. Eager for money. Eager there is talking, literally means to stretch out after. And as I thought about that word, this image came to mind. You think about a track meet, and these guys are running the race, and they come to the finish line. And you expend every last ounce of energy and strength they have to cross that finish line. That's the idea in this word eager to get rich, expending every ounce of energy, every emotion, everything I am for the attainment of money and wealth. So in sense, if we think about love for money, it isn't how much money you have, but how much of you money has. Who's the master when it comes to your life? Jesus put it in Matthew 6. You cannot serve God and money. You'll serve one or the other. Who's the master in your life? Are you the master of your finances, or are your finances the master of you? Now, how do you know that? Well, Paul kind of helps us out in this text. Let's look at some of the symptoms. Symptoms, every disease, every illness has symptoms. Doctors will look at and tell you what you've got. So I think Paul helps us out. Let's pick up with verse 3. I want to read down through verse 10. It says, if anyone teaches false doctrines and does not agree to sound instruction for our Lord Jesus Christ and to godly teaching, he is conceited and understands nothing. He has an unhealthy interest in controversies and quarrels about words that result in envy, strife, malicious talk, evil suspicions, and constant friction between men of corrupt mind, and have been robbed of the truth, who think that godliness is a means to financial gain. And we can probably all stop right there and think about false teachers. These guys have come to Ephesus. The one thing on their mind is using their teaching to do what? Get rich. Now, I'm not going to name names, but I think we all think of guys who kind of fit that image as they preach the message, who seem to be all about wealth. I heard 2 preachers from television explaining why they needed private jets so they wouldn't have to deal with the common people on their flights. I'm not passing judgment, but it just kind of seemed to indicate that their priorities may have been a little bit off. Verse 6, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Let's take, and we could go on down through the next verses. We'll pull some of those out of here. But the symptoms, how do you know if you're in love with money? I think the first one is discontent. He says godliness with contentment is key, but discontentment is a sign that maybe it has an undue hold on your life. John D. Rockefeller, maybe by accounts one of the richest men in all history, was talking to a guy one day, and the guy says, "John, how much money is enough?" And Rockefeller's response was simply this: "Just a little bit more." And that can be true of almost any area of our lives. Just a little bit more. How much is enough? And those of you who may be carrying concealed today, would you just put your gun away right now? How many guns are enough? I know guys who say just one more. How many cars are enough? Whatever your thought is, whatever it is are you content with where you are? There's always, if you have a constant aching as if there's just one more thing I need, a little bit more, it may be an indication that your attitude and thoughts about money may be needing adjusted. Verse 17, let's go down to verse 17. It's a warning. He's talking to people who are rich, but I think it even applies to those who don't. He says, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant." Arrogance. An attitude that somehow because I have money, I am better than other people. That somehow because I have money, people ought to listen to me simply because I have money, even though I may be dumb as a brick. But even beyond that, there's arrogance demonstrated by the ostentation that we want to see. Even if we don't have money, we want to make people think we have money in the clothing we wear, the houses we live in, the cars we drive, the jewelry we wear. There's that whole desire to remain aloof from the riffraff because we're better than they are. James chapter 2 talks about that. He says it's the rich that take advantage of people, the rich who drag you to court. There's an arrogance. If you think your money or possessions or things you have make you better than other people, you might need to examine your attitude about the role money has in your life. Verse 17, he all goes on. He says, "Nor to put their hope in wealth," their trust in their money. I am secure because I have a big bank account. I'm secure because I have a retirement account. I'm secure because I have good insurance. I'm secure in that, and they look to that. My question has always been, when things fall in around me, where's the first thing I look? Where's the first place I look? If I go to the hospital and have a big doctor bill, where's the first place I look? Do I look at my account and say, "Well, I got this handled"? Do I trust? Is my trust in my wealth? Verse 17, I love this one because he says that there is an inability. Where is it? Verse 17, which is so uncertain, put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Do you enjoy what you have? Have you known someone who never finds any enjoyment in life? They spend all their time clutching, hoarding, pursuing, and they never take time to enjoy what they have. They are filled with worry and anxiety that something or someone's going to take it from them, and they're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to get more and more and more, and they never enjoy it. I think of Scrooge McDuck when I think about that. Are you able to enjoy what God? And it's interesting. Why does God give us those things? For our enjoyment. God is not a cosmic killjoy. He wants you to use the things to enjoy life. We're going to talk a little bit more about how that demonstrates itself. But enjoy what God has. Enjoy what God has given you, even if it's not much. Find some enjoyment in it. Verse 18. He says, "Command them to do good, be rich in good deeds, and be generous and willing to share." If you look at statistics, one of the things that stands out, Statistics tell you the more somebody has, the less they share. The more money people have, the less they give away. Which seems incongruous. It seems like a paradox. But they become so self-absorbed with their money and their possessions that they don't want to share it with other people. The people who have the ability to do the most often do the least. Last one, number 6. Verse 19, in this way they will lay up treasure for themselves and a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of life that is truly life. What do you spend more time thinking about? Today or tomorrow? Now or eternity? He says that if you love money, your focus is on here and now, today, and never give a thought to what's coming after. And guess what? Retirement may or may not come, but eternity is certainly coming. People who love money can only focus on here and now, having what is theirs. So those are the symptoms that I've pulled out, 6 of them. But he also goes on to talk about the dangers. There's danger associated with the love of money, and we're going to take time. We'll go back to verse 9 and 10. He says, people who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap. I don't know if anybody else ever watched it, but I watch a program every now and then on one of the channels called Life Below Zero. It recounts the stories of people who live near or above or just around the Arctic Circle. And one of the ways a lot of those people make their living is through trapping. And I have some friends who have been trappers and done the thing. But the thing that reminded me as I thought about temptations and traps, those who are successful at it, and the very success of a trapper depends upon one thing: understanding the prey. Understanding their habits, their appetites, understanding and identifying their trails, and when they get those things down, they are able to put traps and snares in the right place, so it's almost impossible for the animal to miss falling into the trap. Who's the best trapper that you know of men? Satan. 1 Peter 5:8 says the enemy prowls around like a roaring lion seeking who he can devour. Satan knows you. If you don't believe that, he has studied you. He knows your appetites. He knows your habits. He knows your patterns. And he is skilled at setting traps. And the love of money opens our lives up for him to set the trap. And those who love money fall into those temptations and traps. It's our desires that cause us so much trouble. And he goes on in verse 9. He says, they fall into trap and many foolish and harmful desires. And here's that plunge men into ruin and destruction. The word plunge actually means to throw into water and drown. Don't raise your hands. Anybody ever found themselves in a situation financially where they felt like they were literally drowning? That they had, maybe it's because of foolish decisions, harmful desires. Maybe we bought a car that was too much for us to pay. Maybe we have overwhelmed ourselves with credit card debt and we feel like we're drowning. Why? Because of our love for things and money. We end up finding ourselves literally drowning in debt. He says, if you love money, it can lead you to that. It's a danger we need to watch out for. And then finally in verse 10, he says, the plungement, ruin, destruction. Verse 10, the love of money is root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. There's a Greek story of Pandora. If you know Greek mythology, Pandora was created by the gods and given to a man by the name of I can't remember pronounce his name. Anyway, he's given to a man for a wife, and his brother Prometheus warned him not to get involved with her. But Pandora came with a box or a vase and was told never to open it. Well, the story goes, Pandora became so overwhelmed with curiosity that she opened the box, and every form of evil, every form of disease, every form of corruption flew out and entered the world. Now, if you think about it, there's a lot of parallels with that, what happened in the Garden of Eden, that when Eve and Adam partook of that fruit, the world was filled with all the evil that has come. But there's danger. Money, love of money is a literal Pandora's box in our lives. And so what are some of those dangers? First, he says they've wandered from the faith. It's interesting. That word, somebody said, it describes the wandering of an absent-minded man. Someone who forgets where they were going. Now, I identify with that. I can tell you there's times when I'm working or at home and I'll think, I need to go take care of something. And I'll get up and I'll head to go do that thing, and pretty soon I'll see something else and it'll distract me over here, and then I'm distracted over here, and guess what? By the time I'm done, I forgot why I got up in the first place. That's what he's talking about. The love of money is a distraction and can cause people to forget where they were going in the first place. People who started out headed for God and relationship with Him get distracted by the material wealth and money, and pretty soon they're off track and have forgotten where they were headed to begin with. Wandering from the faith. And then he says in verse 10, they pierced themselves with many griefs. Powerful imagery. Piercing. Not this kind. It talks about piercing through. It talks about putting an animal on the spit for roasting. It talks about impaling a man on a spear. It talks about that destructive stabbing. But the most interesting thing about it, Paul says they do it to themselves. Every decision we make in life when it comes to that is we've done it to ourselves. You know, that blasted car salesman sold me this car. Who signed the line? We find ourselves in trouble and struggling because the choices we make with many griefs, many pains. Think about the people in Scripture you can imagine or come up with who impaled themselves because of their desire. I think of Achan in Joshua 7. They were told when they went into Jericho to destroy everything, and Achan saw some money and a precious robe, and he grabbed them and took them and buried them in his tent. He never envisioned what was going to happen. Yet his life and the life of his entire family and all those related to him were forfeit because of God's judgment. Many griefs. Rich young ruler. Jesus said, sell all you have, come follow me. And he turned and walked away. Judas Iscariot sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, regretted it, threw the money back, and Matthew 27 says he went and hanged himself. Think about the griefs people have because of money. We could probably list a whole series of things that people inflicted on themselves who never even thought about the possibility. Take a trip to Salem and enter the prison over here. You think any of those guys who were in jail for stealing from somebody else ever envisioned that they would have that grief in their life? Do you think the people who worked their lives and to gain and gain and gain and lost their families and their marriages ever envisioned that? Do you think people who commit suicide because of financial burden ever envisioned that coming? How about bankruptcy? How about those who become addicted to gambling to gain more, or addicted to substances to kind of deal with the situation of life? Do you ever think they envisioned that coming? There's all kinds of griefs and pains that we inflict on ourselves by our decisions to make money the object of our pursuit. There's danger involved. So are you severely depressed yet? So what do we do about it? You know, healthcare professionals will tell you the best way to defend yourself against the disease is preventive care. And so here's the preventive. Let's go back to verse 6. He starts out with these words, verse 6, but godliness with contentment. Godliness, that is a life that is focused on pleasing God, a life that is focused on demonstrating a love for God. If you go back to Psalm chapter 1 and look at verses 1 through 3, I think we get a good description of what that life looks like. And the psalmist puts it this way, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He's like a tree planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. And we looked at that word prosper last week. What does it mean? Wholeness. Shalom, completion. A life of godliness focuses on obeying God and serving God and making and pleasing Him. But he says also godliness with contentment. Remember we talked about contentment being, discontent being wanting more? Contentment is a satisfaction with where I am. One of the things, I drive my kids and family crazy every birthday and Christmas. Because they say, Dad, we need the list of what you want. You guys. I never have a list, and it drives them crazy. Because my want list is pretty short. The things I really want in life or have a driving desire for, I don't have a list. And that's what contentment is. It's having a short list, short wish list. Of being content with where I am and what I'm doing and how life is. Philippians 4, 11 through 13, we're going to look at that in a couple weeks. But Philippians 4, Paul says, I've learned the secret of being content. Notice what he says, I've learned the secret. Contentment is not something you just happen on. Contentment is something we teach ourselves and we learn in life. Look at what else he says in that verse. He says, if we have food and clothing, we'll be content. I don't know very many people who are there. If I just have food, not necessarily extravagant food, if I just am able to feed my body and clothe my body, we're good. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But number 3, remember its nature. Verse 7, we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. John D. Rockefeller died. Somebody asked another man, how much did he leave? All of it. We're taking nothing out of this life with us. Whatever we have stays behind. Ecclesiastes, if you've never read the book of Ecclesiastes, there is a lot of wisdom when it comes to life. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 17 through 19, read this way. He says, I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I toiled for under the sun because, why? I must leave them to one who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool. Yet he will have control over all the work into which I poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. And he goes on to talk about the meaningless, the fact, the folly of wealth and money is that you have it for a moment. but when you die, it stays. Remember its nature. It doesn't last. Verse 8, live simply. Food and clothing. The more stuff we have, the more our concerns and weigh on us, right? I think Ecclesiastes says the more goods increase, the more are those who consume them. Live simply. Are you content? Are you content driving a car that runs? Are you content living in a home that meets your needs? Are you content with the clothing you have, or does it, and it doesn't have to be designer labels, it doesn't even have to be new. Living simply means that I can focus on what's important and not have all these other concerns going on around me. See, if I live someplace that's not the best in the world, I save money insurance-wise. I save money on a lot of things because I'm content with the simple things. And then he goes on to give Timothy some advice in dealing with these false teachers. Verse 11, he says, but you, man of God, flee from all this. What's all this he's talking about? The love of money. Flee from it. Turn your back on it. Go the opposite direction. And then he says, pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. There's a play on words here, by the way. And previously we said those who are eager to get rich, who are stretching out for it, who are expending all their effort and energy to get money. That's the idea he pursues here as he says, pursue righteousness. Make your goal, focus your energy on becoming what God has called you to be. Obtaining righteousness, godliness, faith, love. How much time and energy are you expending on developing spiritual maturity in your life versus the amount of time you spend trying to possess what the world has to offer? Pursue it. Make an unrelenting desire and intention to gain it. Verse 17, enjoy what God gives you. Find some time to enjoy it. If you have the opportunity, take a vacation. If you have the opportunity to spend time with your kids, spend time with your kids. Enjoy what God gives you. Ecclesiastes 6:3. Again, the writer of Ecclesiastes helps us out when he writes these words. A man may have 100 children. And live many years. I doubt that. Yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, I say that stillborn child is better off than he is. Did you get that? Even if you live many years and if you cannot enjoy what God has given you, a stillborn child is better off than you are. Are you enjoying what God's given you? And we went out Friday afternoon out to Clinton's place and to let Avery do some shooting. And I didn't shoot very much, but I just got a lot of enjoyment watching Avery. I want to tell you, my grandson's a natural clay pigeon shooter. Never picked up a shotgun in his life, and Clinton started throwing those clay pigeons out there. You probably missed 4 out of all he threw. I didn't shoot because I didn't want to be embarrassed after that. But there is enjoyment in that, just going out and being and spending time doing something because I can. Are you enjoying life? Enjoying what God gives you? The last one, number 7, in verse 18, do good and be generous. Live open-handed and generously. If you go back to it, that fits in right with number 6. There is nothing more joyous to me than giving to somebody else. I find that the greatest enjoyment is giving something to someone else and seeing the delight in their face, or the joy, or the sense of relief that comes over them. That's enjoyment. There's something special about that. 2 Corinthians 9, 10 through 11, that we know it. It says, he who sows sparingly will reap sparingly, he who sows generously. But in that passage, he talks about the fact that God increases your harvest in order that what? You may give more. Why is God blessing your life? Not so you can drive a brand new car and live in a brand new house. God's blessing your life so you can bless others. And as a result of that, you can bring glory to God. Do good. Be generous. We have the opportunity to do amazing things with what God's given us. The love of money is a root of evil. I know people don't use poetry very much anymore in sermons, but I have a poem. I went through my file and found this on a sermon I preached about money, and I thought it fit. So if you don't like poetry, you'll just have to endure. But listen for the message. It says, if you should die this afternoon, what would you take with you? That farm on which you've toiled for years, a sack of money too? If you should die this afternoon, then would you take your car, and would you take your stocks and bonds you wisely bought on par? No, should you die this afternoon, it's not too soon for plans. Tomorrow every cent you own would be another man's. If you should die this afternoon, and any day you could, each stick and stone and dime you own would all be gone for good. But did you give a quarter to some beggar you saw weep? How strange to learn beyond this life that this is what you keep. Those missionary funds you gave to spread the word afar are banked for you in God's account, but not your house and car. Those dollars given to your church are all you really save, for only money placed with God shows up beyond the grave. So should you die this afternoon, are your investments wrong? Or have you planned on what you'll lose and what you'll take along? We went and had an appointment with our financial advisor a while back. And I remember sitting down with the first guy that did that, and the first question was, what plans are you making for the future? He meant retirement. What are your plans? And most of us probably have given thought to that, and we are working towards retirement. But as a spiritual advisor, the question I come today with us is, what plans have you made for the future? What plans have you made for eternity? Because you see, retirement may or may not come, but eternity will. And Jesus said, what will it matter if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? What will you give in exchange for it? See, real wealth is found in pursuing a right relationship with Jesus. Prosperity is found in a relationship with Him. It's in coming to Him and in recognition that I have failed miserably, that I have fallen short of the life that God called me to be, and God's love for me moved Him to develop a plan. And He sent His Son Jesus to die on a cross to pay my price. And Jesus came that I might be free, and I might have life, and I might have prosperity, the wholeness we were intended to have. It's in coming to Jesus, in absolute dependence on what He did for us. Getting back on the right path, not wandering anymore, but coming back on that right path, taking us to a place we really want to be. Acknowledging Him before men, being obedient to Him in baptism. That's preparation for eternity. And then pursuing a life of righteousness and godliness. Have you made those preparations? Are you ready for eternity? Because the only thing you're going to take with you is your soul. Father God, thank you for today. Thank you for your wisdom of your word. Father, it just seems to fly in direct contrast to the world we live in. And so you give us an opportunity every day to be the church, to stand out as different, to have a different mentality, a different mindset than the world around us. and gives an opportunity for us to explain why. Father, today we come knowing that real wealth is found in relationship with you, in doing the things you've given us to do, sharing with others, and laying up those treasures in heaven. Lord, today we're going to gather at Jesus' table, and we're going to remember the price he paid for us to have life, for us to be free. Father, as we partake of these emblems, let us remember your love. Let us remember his sacrifice. And let us remember he did it all for us. Father, speak to us during this time. Help us to know how we ought to respond. In Jesus' name.